If I could change my brain, my ADHD brain, my anxiety brain, sometimes I wish I could. But in other ways, it's your superpower.
The best thing that you can always do is start from here, right? Start from you loving and accepting yourself, you treating yourself the way in which you deserve. It's okay that sometimes you're like, this sucks. This is too much. I don't want this. Hi, and welcome back to Connected and Uncensored. I am your host, Michaela Overman, and today we are joined by a really special guest, Emily Martin. And Emily is one of my viewers actually from my ASMR channel. And I put up a post asking about what people wanted to see from my podcast. And I thought I would just jump in quickly to reading what she said so you can get a bit of a snapshot on what today's episode is going to be about before I introduce the beautiful Emily. So she reached out and said, I have ADHD, anxiety, dyslexia, and dyscalculia, and I have struggled and still struggle with depressive periods at times. I am medicated, but I was only diagnosed with ADHD when I was 12. Before then, no one had picked up on it until a teacher mentioned it to my parents, and boy, did it change my life. I am in my last year of high school right now, and I've always struggled with accepting myself and not feeling ashamed for my ADHD. So I would love some tips and advice on accepting yourself and learning to navigate how to get through life with the underlying "they hate me" thoughts. I'm thinking into my future and would also love some advice on how to move into adulthood and how to make the big jump and transition a bit smoother. Is there anything I can do to mentally prepare myself? Is there any ways that I can lessen the overstimulation? So, reading this, I obviously felt really drawn to Emily's questions, and I found them super powerful and lovely that she felt safe and open enough to ask them to me. But I also noticed how many of my viewers were responding back with wanting to know questions around ADHD, especially. And I thought, what a beautiful way to talk about this on the podcast rather than just me sitting here ranting on my own, but actually having somebody who is experiencing these symptoms. So, Emily, thank you so much for joining me today on Connected and Uncensored. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be on.
Yeah, that is, I think, so brave of you as well to when I said, "Hey, can you come on the podcast?" to be able to say, "You know what? Yeah, I'm going to do that." How are you feeling today coming on the podcast?
I'm super excited to share more of my story and get it out a bit more. I've done a podcast before, but it's just been in New Zealand. And so I'm excited to reach more people and help more people because I know how hard it can be and I know how lonely it can be.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I wanted to, I guess, start this podcast with, if you're comfortable with just sharing a little bit more about your story with your diagnosis so the viewers can get just a bit of an idea of kind of, I guess, what were the symptoms and what did your teacher notice? Because it can be very different between girls and boys, which is something we'll come back to a little bit later.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for my story, it's really important to go back to my very early childhood because this is stuff that's happened since I was very young. So I was in my local public primary school. That's what we call it here in New Zealand. And I was always and still am a very bubbly individual. I love life. I love to learn. I love meeting new people. I'm extremely compassionate for others. And that was something that was you could see it in me from a young age. And then in year 2, so that's New Zealand year 2, I had a very traumatic experience with a teacher who, I don't know how she even got her teaching license, to be perfectly honest, and still has it. I've blocked most of it out because that's my trauma response. But
Yeah.
something my mum has told me that one day I came home absolutely hysterical because this teacher had ripped up the students' work in front of the class, and I was petrified that that was going to happen to me. And she did a whole lot more awful things, and it wasn't just us that complained to the school, it was multiple families that complained to the school about her. And then at about age 6, I got referred to the public child health services here in Auckland, where I live. And I saw them. And when I saw them, I don't think I really understood my purpose of going to talk to them. Like, oh, this is to talk about your anxiety. This is to talk about your feelings, all that
Mm.
stuff. And I've always masked. I still mask my anxiety, my ADHD, everything. I mask it. And so from a very young age, I masked it. And I ended up actually getting kicked out because they claimed I didn't have enough anxiety, which was the complete
Goodness.
opposite because mum and dad could see it at home and they were completely confused. But I presented myself as like, oh, I'm fine. Everything's okay. Like nothing's wrong.
Mm.
When clearly there was a lot going on. And my mum, like, I talked to her yesterday and she said, like, the reason we got you in there was because I was constantly, the anxiety showed up in stomach aches. I wouldn't eat breakfast before school until maybe even just before high school. I wouldn't eat breakfast before school. I felt like I was going to
Mm.
throw up constantly. I had these killer stomach aches. And obviously, my parents saw it at home with my behavior. It was oppositional and all of that. I ended up then moving from that school to a private school for years 4 to 6. And at that school, while I was there, I got diagnosed with dyslexia. And when we took that diagnosis to the school, they completely shunned it. They didn't give me any of my support that was recommended by professionals. They wouldn't embrace it at all. And so obviously it was very hard for me. And the class that I was in as well there, it was at one point there was like 20 something girls and one boy. And so you can just imagine like the dynamics of it. It was very hard. And I didn't have many friends. I was constantly judged there. The teachers I feel kind of judged me a bit, to be honest. And so I didn't
Mm.
have anyone close to me. I couldn't be myself. I was absolutely miserable. My anxiety was at an
Mm.
all-time high. We had,
Mm.
at that time, I was seeing people externally, counselors, therapists, whatever. And I don't actually remember a whole lot of it. From what I do remember, though, is I think I still continued to mask a lot of it and I kind of kept it underneath. And so I was very unhappy and I was at absolute crisis point. I was barely passing school. My whole schooling and school reports, I was told, Emily's such a bright kid, but if only she could focus more, or she doesn't focus in class. I know she's going to tell you this, but she can't focus, etc. Like all those sayings I hear from people so much when after they get diagnosed with ADHD. And those were really
Mm.
hard for my parents and for me to read because I was like, I'm just doing my best. Is my best not good enough? And something at the school I was at for years 4 to 6, is it was a school focused on having the smart kids and pushing the smart kids beyond their limits. And obviously, when I left that school, I was not passing anything. The only thing I passed maths that year with 30%. The only thing I was
Mm.
passing was English, and that was at like 51%. So obviously, I was not thriving. I was not thriving
Mm.
in my schoolwork and friendships. Mentally, I wasn't thriving. I was in one of my lowest points. And so my mum was like, we got to do something because nothing is working for her. And then we found this small private school that only had 50 kids called Mount Hobson Middle School. It no longer exists because we couldn't get enough government funding. And I went there for New Zealand's year 7 to 8. And so I don't know what that is in Australia or wherever you're from, the viewers. But we found that school and it changed my life completely. By the second I stepped foot into that school, I suddenly felt so accepted. And because the reason we went there is because A, it was so small, they had an alternative learning style where we still followed the New Zealand curriculum, but it was in project form. So it actually felt like there was a purpose for my learning. I wasn't just learning this topic in science for the sake of it. I was learning it because it connects to a topic. And then I can use that in the project ADHD and all that. So they were equipped to help. And there was actually a specialist teacher there. And she kind of, when I went there, I started, because I felt accepted and I felt like it was okay to be myself. it showed up academically as well. I went from not passing anything to getting excellence, gradually getting excellence, and but I was excelling, and I finally felt like I was worthy, and it was okay to be myself. And then that teacher, Amanda, the specialist teacher, she ended up saying to my parents, "Hey, look, I actually think Emily's got ADHD. I think you should get it tested." And the thing is my brother, who's younger than me, he's got autism and ADHD. So we already kind of knew about it. But mum and dad were like,
Mm.
now looking back and mum reads stuff, she's like, how did we not pick up on this sooner? Because you've got every single girl symptom.
Mm.
And so I got tested, and it turns out I did have ADHD. And my brother is medicated for his ADHD. And something that me and my parents talked about a lot was, do you want to be medicated? And we decided that that was going to be the best thing for me, was to be medicated. And it changed my life. I'm suddenly able to focus more. I'm passing with flying colors. I'm obviously I still find exams really hard, but I do have special assessment conditions.
Mm-hmm.
I now, once that school closed down, so it closed down at the end of my year 8, and then I moved to a public high school, an all-girls school here in Auckland. And it was a big jump because it went from a very small school to having 2,000 plus girls. And it's a big school, but I've managed to find my support there. And I have an amazing team behind me. My mum and my dad are my rocks, particularly my mum. I have an amazing pediatrician who also looks after my brother. So I have that. I had an amazing counselor that I saw through the school, and she's ended up just leaving. But I found a new counselor at the school who is just as amazing, and I love just as much, and she's so understanding. But yeah, and my anxiety as well, like the anxiety, I got, well, I'm formally diagnosed with anxiety, but I'm also medicated for my anxiety as well, which doesn't take the anxiety away. I still have the anxiety, I still have panic attacks, I still overthink, but it does take the edge off it. And so, especially with the ADHD medication, it helps me emotionally regulate a whole lot more, because I'm able to kind of, sometimes I will just go from 0 to 100, but there are days where I can take a step back and go, hang on, like, let's emotionally regulate. But there are still days I'm not perfect, but I definitely still find it very hard to accept my ADHD, especially in a world where I find it's not talked about a whole lot, to be perfectly honest. Like, it is, and people are like, oh, I've got ADHD, but it's the understanding part. And I feel like unless you have lived experience with it or have family members or whatever, you don't get it. Or you're a trained professional, you don't get it. And it is incredibly hard for me, because I've found that there are some people in my life that are willing to understand it, and they're willing to accept it, and they understand, okay, that's just whatever it is, that's just Emily, but we love her for it. But then there are people in my life and have been people in my life that just don't get it, and they aren't willing to, and they don't believe in it, I think. And so I have felt a lot of harm. I have had a lot of harm emotionally through that. And so whenever that happens, it just breaks me down a lot. And I find it very hard, because I just don't understand how people can be so closed-minded and can be so, I don't want to say selfish, but a bit selfish. But the funny thing is with my journey is that with my diagnosis, so I did get diagnosed with dyscalculia when I was in year 10. And we always kind of knew it was there, because I've never been good at maths. I can't do my times tables for the life of me unless it's the super easy ones. I struggle with word problems. And even when it's like 2 plus 2, but it's like harder formulations and stuff, I still can't do it without a calculator. So I do find it still hard. But the funny thing is with my journey is through me being diagnosed with ADHD and my brother being diagnosed with ADHD and autism. My dad actually got diagnosed with ADHD and autism. And he is now medicated, and he has support, and my mum has anxiety. So we're a very neurotypical family. And then through my dad's diagnosis, his mum got diagnosed, and my aunt got diagnosed. So he picked up on it. Everyone kind of picked up on it. And I've got my family, most of it is very understanding of it. And the ones that aren't, we've kind of cut off for a number of reasons. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that and giving everybody a bit more of an understanding of your journey. I think the two main things that I would love to continue talking about from that is, I guess, one being why potentially you weren't diagnosed for such a long time or until you were 12 and your brother had already been diagnosed. I mean, you did mention in our conversation the difference between how boys are so often diagnosed compared to girls. And I did just want to talk on that point for a little bit. And I guess to give the viewers a bit of an understanding of this episode, we are just going to go back and forth a little bit between listening to Emily and then me putting my psych hat on and giving a bit of an explanation to some of those things, because I think it's beneficial for Emily to hear it, but I think it's beneficial for other viewers, because I can imagine that there are a lot of people, and this is not an episode just for girls with ADHD, but I can imagine that there are a lot of viewers that are listening right now that are girls that think to themselves, why haven't I been diagnosed? Or why was I diagnosed so late? Or, why do my symptoms show up in X, Y, and Z? Or might even listen to this and go, holy shit, I think I might have ADHD because I have those symptoms and I thought ADHD looked like this. So I guess the
Absolutely.
biggest thing there is, yeah, for boys, stereotypically, now this is not like a blanket statement, but stereotypically, boys' symptoms of ADHD are the hyperactive and impulsive symptoms of ADHD, which is the stereotypical kind of view that people have. It's like someone can't stop fidgeting, or, someone gets up out of their chair all the time and runs around. Like, this is a real stereotypical view of ADHD. And more often than not, they are the symptoms that boys have. Whereas girls, on the other hand, have a lot more inattention symptoms and emotional dysregulation symptoms. So, the feelings of overwhelm, or the 0 to 100 emotion that you were talking about, or the anxiety in itself, is very often in girls linked to their ADHD. I think that for the criteria of ADHD for a diagnosis, it is so black and white, and I feel like it needs to be updated, because there are so many girls like yourself who are like, but I don't have that, that, or that. But, then you do have the emotional dysregulation, or you do have the more inattention where you're kind of struggling to focus in class. We mask the negative. We want to present the positive. And again, this is a
Oh, 100%.
stereotype. So
Yeah.
before anyone comes at me with boys do it too. This is just me expressing the most common. The norm is that women mask so much more their emotional struggles, including their anxiety and their ADHD. So because they are masking it, many people are missing it. And because they are masking it, many people are misdiagnosing it as, oh, they're just a worrywart, or they're just this, or they're just that. Um, so I think a really big thing that, you may have seen personally, but people that follow me on social media, now sitting on the board of Heart on My Sleeve, the charity in Australia is all about speaking your truth and sharing your story and turning towards the pain. And I feel like it's a message that I want so many viewers to take on board, of not masking what you are going through and sharing your struggles and sharing the real you. I think makes such a difference. Like you today, being so brave and vulnerable, sharing your story is hugely impactful. And I hope that there are people that listen to this today and take that on board and say, I can drop my mask. I don't have to hold it up. I can share myself, because when I do that, my whole world can change.
Yeah,
I can
100%.
get, yeah, the right tools. So I think that was one of the biggest things I took from what you said.
Yeah.
And the other thing is those tools, medication. I have so many clients and friends who, when they're recommended medication, they're like, what? No.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. And feel so threatened by it. Rather than, I guess, the way I look at it is you have this toolbox for whatever mental health struggle you are going through. And it's just one of the tools. Some people don't need to use
100%.
it.
Yeah.
But most of the time with ADHD, you do, because it is the most effective. However, I wanted to talk about the toolbox in
Yeah.
today's session
Yeah, absolutely.
because I feel like part of your questions, or most of them, do relate to if you use that toolbox in the right way,
Yeah.
your overwhelm, your transition, dealing with people, like you just said, that don't understand potentially and ebb and flow in your life. You know, these things will be easier to manage and take on.
Mm.
But I do personally think that medication is profoundly powerful and useful. And I always say to people, trialing medication is always an option in your toolbox. And if you prefer, you can do every other option in your toolbox. And if you still get to the end of it and you go, still struggling, then give it a go. So on that note, based off your answer, it was a game changer, but how did you feel starting medication?
So I would like to just preface this for everyone that's listening that I'm not on the first medication we tried. It took a lot of trial and error, and it was hard to find a medication that worked for me. But I think a lot of people will say, oh, the first medication didn't work, I'm going to run away from it. There are so many types of ADHD medications that I've tried, that my dad has tried, that my brother has tried. It's just finding the right balance that works for you and works for your brain chemistry. So if the first one doesn't work for you, that's okay, because there are others out there. And for some people, you might not ever find one, and that's okay, because there are other ways you can deal with it.
I love that. I love that point. It's really, really important.
Yeah, and I
because
think
it's so true. It is very, very common for people to trial medication and then go, oh my God, it didn't work. So I'm not doing it anymore. And I highly encourage people to hear that message from Emily, that now look at the difference that it's making for her, but it is not by any means the first one she tried.
No.
So really important point. I just wanted to highlight there.
And I just wanted to being very open here, but I just want to say I'm currently on a medication change for anyone that's listening. So I'm currently going through a medication change, and I know it is so fucking draining and it is so hard. And there have been times I feel like I'm going crazy, but the end result is so rewarding. I've actually had friends that say to me, oh, I think I've got ADHD. And I look at them, I'm like, based on my own experience, what I've seen from others, and I go, yeah, how have you not realized this before? But then they say to me, but I'm not sure about going on medication. I feel like it's going to change me. I feel like I'm not going to be the same person. And I completely understand that. But with me and my medication and my ADHD, I've found that because of the medication, I've actually been able to flourish and become the true version of myself, which is bubbly and talkative. I'll talk someone's ear off, being passionate about the things I love, being able to stand up for myself a bit more is something I've been really working on recently. And so I found because of the medication, I'm actually able to do that. Whereas without the medication, the anxiety would have taken over. The anxiety would have put up boundaries. And I'm on a mix of anxiety and ADHD medication, and so maybe that's what it is. But it has helped me tremendously, not just in my personal life, but in my academic life. Going on medication, my whole brain just suddenly went quiet, and I was suddenly able to just focus on the task at hand. I was able to fully put myself into it. And even if it's not something I'm super passionate about, I'm still able to focus and get the rewarding results. And especially with maths, I've ended up dropping maths. I'm in my last year of high school. I dropped maths in year 11 because it was not worth my mental health to continue pursuing it. And it was not, we have this joke in my family. My dad's an accountant. He owns his own business, and he was not diagnosed until he was 50. My mum is in marketing and she worked in the corporate world. And she has a commerce degree. So they're both very mathematic. My little brother, he's only 11, but he loves maths, and his brain is extraordinary in the way it works, and he's so into physics at the moment. He asked me all these things about physics. I'm like, mate, I don't understand what you're talking about, but I appreciate you talking to me about it. But
Yeah, yeah.
I have found that my outlets are English and creativity. So I take
Mhm.
photography, media studies,
Mhm.
drama, art history, and English because those are things I'm really love and I'm really passionate about. And so I think it is so important to focus on the things you're passionate about. And because of the medication, yes, I've dropped maths and science, but when I was taking maths and science, even though teachers couldn't see it, I was working extremely hard behind the
Mhm.
scenes to even pass. And no one
Mhm.
still sees it except for my family and those that are close to
Yeah.
me. But I've worked my butt off to get where I am today.
Mhm.
And the ADHD medication, the anxiety medication has helped me, but it wasn't the
Yeah.
100% cure. It has helped me
Yes.
get to where I am, but it
Mhm.
didn't fix everything. You still have to do the work and you still have
Mhm.
to apply
Mhm.
yourself. But I
Yeah.
think being open to medication and even trialing it, and if you end up going on, I don't know, 5 medications and you still don't think it's the right thing for you, okay, well, at least you tried. At least you tried, and then
Mhm.
you can revisit it at a different date.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it as as you mentioned, it doesn't change the person you are. It helps you harness those parts of you that you love. Um, and I think, with the anxiety medication, the way I describe it in my rooms, for example, is when you have anxiety, I mean, there are obviously different levels of anxiety, but when you have anxiety and you start your day
Mm.
and you have to use all of your energy and effort just to get to base camp,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
But if you have medication, you get to wake up at base camp. And when you use your effort and energy, you get to go and climb Everest and actually, achieve the things that you want to achieve. So I feel like medication is just a great way for you to change your baseline so that you can then use the other tools in your toolbox, or
Yeah.
you can then feel like you have the capability to do those bigger things that
Yeah.
you want to do. So I think it's important for people to hear others' experiences on medication.
Yeah, and it can always be changed. That's the thing, is yeah,
Yeah.
it might have effects on your brain, but it can always be changed, and there are always ways to help you if something doesn't
Yeah.
work.
Absolutely. No, yeah, absolutely. It can always be changed.
No.
Nothing is set in stone. And I think, one of the things that you mentioned earlier is how do I accept my ADHD diagnosis or even
Mm.
anxiety diagnosis? And I feel that for a lot of people, it's really confronting. And I mean, if you follow me on ASMR and have watched any of my videos around mental health, I expressed in one of my videos that I was diagnosed with anxiety. I was diagnosed with anxiety far later than when my anxiety presented itself. But I, being a girl, probably as well, especially would be contributing to it, mastered exceptionally well because the way that my anxiety presented itself was being a carer and problem solving for everybody and looking after everybody. No one's going to assume the person looking after everybody has, severe anxiety. I ended up utilizing other tools in my toolkit because I was a psychologist and I had, researched into all of these tools and I didn't even realize that I fully had
Yeah,
anxiety.
yeah,
The
yeah.
irony, right? Being a psychologist. But I utilized all these other tools. And for me, my baseline did really, really change. And so I didn't need to use the tool of medication. But had it not changed, I would have absolutely
Yeah.
utilized that tool. But I have found that my baseline and how I need to manage it. If I veer off that, like for me, physical exercise every day, not eating refined sugar, and minimal alcohol consumption is what I need for a healthy baseline.
Yeah.
So if I veer off that, I feel like shit. And I think it's really important for people to understand that with all of those tools, it's
Mhm.
not just you do them and you cured. You want to
No.
find what is good for your baseline,
Yeah.
and your baseline is different to everybody's. Yours
Yes.
might be exercise and medication. It might be just exercise. It might be therapy, exercise, medication. It might be deep belly breath. It might be a whole range of things. But my biggest suggestion for people is to figure out, what does your toolbox look like? What are the tools that you find most impactful? What are the tools that you enjoy doing, and then kind of assessing which ones pack the most of a punch. And so when you have different levels of overwhelm or anxiety, you know which ones to pull from.
Yeah.
So jumping into that toolbox, I would love to know from you, do you use any of these? Do you use physical exercise, removing refined sugar or food coloring from your diet, deep belly breathing, cold water or cold therapy exposure, mindfulness or meditation? Do you use any of those five things at the moment?
So I'm definitely very conscious of how I look physically and what I eat. I do have some stuff with body image that I'm very self-conscious of, and so I am trying to be more physical. And me and my mum go on walks a lot. Like there's a waterfront here in Auckland that I absolutely love, and so me and my mum have been trying to go a lot more for those walks because I find it's so much better than just walking on a treadmill. Like I did try that, and I didn't really. I just felt like, oh my God, when is this going to end? Whereas,
Mm, mm.
when it's a beautiful place, it's a beautiful waterfront, I feel connected and I just feel at peace. Like I have my music in and I can just fully focus and it becomes more
Yeah.
enjoyable. I do,
Mm.
I am trying the gym at the moment. I have a PT because I do have some back issues. And so I don't trust myself to go into the gym by myself. And I do have a PT that I know personally as well, who's lovely. And I trust her so much. But it's been a kind of out of whack because I've had lots of medical stuff going on. My whole life I've tried mindfulness and meditation, and I do like the five senses, like five things you can see and four things you
Mhm,
can touch, like that type of stuff I do a lot, and deep breathing, like
mhm.
triangle breathing or whatever you want to call it. And I've been trying lately to journal my thoughts and journal how I'm feeling at the end of every day. It's off to a bad start because I keep forgetting. But I find that it helps, and I also see a counselor, like I mentioned, and I find it just
Yep.
really helpful to get it out because I am a talker, as you can probably tell. I talk a lot. And so
That's
I'm very open with my mum is my best friend. I'm very open with my family about how I am and my counselor. And I find that those things help a lot.
mm,
And yeah, it's just finding if you want to talk to a counselor or whoever, it's just finding the right ones. And it's taken me so long to find
yep.
the right people. But there are ones out there, and something my mum's just said to me, it's like usually the best ones are the ones with the waiting list, to be honest, if you're going privately,
Yeah.
because I'm
Yeah.
private.
I do think that with the therapist, it's the same as with medication. It's not, hey, I tried therapy, I didn't click with the therapist, therapy's not for me. The therapeutic relationship is it's the most important factor
Yeah,
in whether or not the therapy is actually successful.
yeah,
So
100%.
trialing a therapist until you feel I connect with this person is exceptionally important. I just want to circle quickly back to you
Yeah,
mentioning body image. So when I say physical exercise and, refined sugar and food coloring, for example, when I bring those up, it has zero to do with how somebody physically looks as to why I encourage those things. And I find that the biggest thing that's important, especially for young viewers, I mean, one of my podcasts is on nutrition and exercise with a nutrition expert. You really strongly speak about your why for doing exercise and eating how you do. I strongly recommend that not being connected to looking a particular way. I think for myself, I say to myself every single day why I'm moving my body and why I'm choosing to eat these foods is because I don't want to feel anxious. And I think if you can shift your why, it does make a big difference there. But I just wanted to really highlight that because I'm not suggesting physical exercise or these diet changes for anything to do with physical appearance, but for ADHD and anxiety and just general mental health well-being,
mm,
the number one thing that you can do for your nervous system, so the number one thing that you can do to regulate your nervous system to be in its parasympathetic nervous system is actually physical exercise, because your brain and your body will get the signaling that it is safe, it is not trapped, it is okay. So often when we're feeling really overwhelmed, people will kind of like sit in the same spot and ruminate on their thoughts or do what you're doing and express themselves to their parent or the person they're closest with. And I actually suggest something a little bit different to maybe what you've been doing to, I mean, if it works for you, keep going. But for a lot of people, they think it's working. But repeating the story that is happening in your mind can actually cause more stress to the nervous system.
Yeah,
And the
absolutely.
best thing that you can do is actually to get up and go and move your body. And I say going for a walk in nature is phenomenal because nature exposure is scientifically proven to reduce anxiety. So it's not that, oh, just go for a walk in nature, it's amazing. Like it's actually really, really wonderful for your nervous system and nervous system regulation. But you can simply stand up and do 10 star jumps and 10 squats and 10 push ups if you wanted. Just moving your body in those overwhelming moments makes a really big difference. But having it as your daily routine to do physical movement doesn't need to be the gym. It can be walking, it can be progressive muscle tensing, which I can put a link in the show notes for how to do that. But it's basically just giving your brain the message every day that it is safe, it is not being chased by a saber-toothed tiger,
Yeah.
or that it is, trapped in the same spot. That's why I bring up physical exercise. And in terms with ADHD, especially, refined sugar and food coloring, if you don't want to do medication, psychiatrists suggest that removing those two things from your diet is the biggest thing that you can do.
Yeah.
So that's why I suggest that. And it's the same with anxiety. So that's why I suggest those things. Then on top of that, deep belly breathing, mindfulness, meditation, cold water exposure, journaling, these are all just amazing tools that people can use if they feel it works for them. So I would actually recommend giving it a go, that when you are feeling overwhelmed, chatting to a therapist, hands down, recommend that to absolutely everybody. But journaling is phenomenal because you are getting that out of your mind, because it's really powerful to not keep it ruminating here, but you are not repeating the story and letting your nervous system hear that story again to someone else.
Yeah.
So I actually often recommend don't go and vocalize, every time these overwhelming moments to friends and family. Vocalize it to your journal first. So it's kind of like putting in different lines of defense.
Yeah.
And then the last line of defense is going to go chat to mom or whoever your close person is. So it's, journaling out your emotions.
Right.
2025 and it's in the playground. 2025 and it's in the playground and you're fighting with a friend. It just says, pupils dilating, heart rate increasing, palms getting sweaty, tiger, run.
Oh,
So the most important thing to take from that, the most important thing actually to take from that I found the biggest game changer for my own anxiety is if your body and your body isn't knowing the difference of what is causing this reaction. So what the stimulus is, it just goes reaction. Okay, run. That means that the way that we can actually heal this reaction doesn't involve what is causing it, because your body and your brain doesn't actually understand what is causing it.
yeah.
So if we say, I'm feeling this way, first I'm going to regulate my nervous system, which means getting my brain and my physiological body to not be in this state. That actually means we do not involve any of the stimulus. We do not talk about what this person said or talk to this person or, you know, try and solve why my diary won't line up or whatever is causing anxiety. We say first step is move my body so my body and my nervous system starts to regulate. Go and have a cold shower, go and do some deep belly breathing, go for a walk in nature, all of those things. So this applies to even if you're having a fight with your partner, for example, or a friend. What we do in our household, if we start to feel like we're having, friction or tension or there's an argument, we say pause, we put on our shoes and we go for a walk. Because even if I'm feeling anxious, my husband doesn't say, okay, well, let's talk about why you're anxious. Let's talk about, how we can solve it. We go pause. We will get to that stage. But remember, first step is always regulate nervous system.
Yeah.
So what he does is he says to me, do you want to go for a run? Do you want to go for a walk? Do you want to have a 30-second connecting hug? Every tool I'm throwing at you now are ones that actually teach your nervous system that it is safe. So 30-second hug with someone you feel safe with, exercise, cold shower, deep belly breathing. He's like, do you want to go and meditate? Because he knows that that is what is actually going to send the message. So that's a great tip for anyone that has a friend or a family member that is experiencing any kind of mental health struggle.
Yeah.
Pause on the figuring out the why, regulate their nervous system. So when I say this stuff to you, how do you feel about taking that approach to overwhelming moments and changing it up a little bit? Yeah. 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 Mm. 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 Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So on that note of catching yourself in the moment, I would love for you and anyone listening to come up with a bit of a green light, orange light, red light system for yourself. So knowing physically and emotionally how you feel when you're green, orange, red, green being homeostasis, everything is fine, red being fight or flight, holy shit, tiger. And orange is the one we want to pay attention to the most and learn the most about ourselves. So orange is like, is that a crack retreat ranch? Is that something over there? I don't know. It's that stage where our body and our brain is like on the lookout for danger.
Yeah.
If you know what orange in you looks like and feels like, that's when you jump in with your nervous system regulation. You're probably trying to jump in with nervous system regulation when you're in red, and it's too late. Your body and brain's like, well, let's fucking go.
Yeah.
So if you can pick up on orange, and I recommend people keep a bit of a journal, a bit of a diary on this. And when you have ever felt that you're in fight or flight, and you are calm later on, reflect back on how did I feel maybe like 20 minutes before that? What were my physical symptoms? Were they like tense in my wrist? Was I clenching my jaw or my shoulders up? Did I have a knot in my stomach? Did I have a lump in my throat? Did I have a tight chest? What was I thinking? Did I start to spiral on the same thought? Like, really make it a conscious, mindful decision to figure out what your orange looks like, and then make your goal to regulate your nervous system when you are in orange with any of the tools that we've discussed. And then you go and figure out, hey, what actually caused it and how do I fix that? It's kind of like
Yeah.
changing the order. And I personally think if people can figure out how to do this in their teens, like this is one of the reasons why I joined Heart on My Sleeve or I started this podcast. Most of my audience is like, I think it's 60% of them are 17 to 24. That is a huge amount from
Yeah.
230,000 people. And I think if you can learn how to use these tools and skills now of how to regulate your nervous system, figuring out what orange looks like to you, figuring out what tools of regulating your nervous system impact you the best, and figuring out which ones of those you need to do on a daily basis as your baseline. That is the answer to your question of how do I prepare for any transition, whether it be adulthood, to having a romantic relationship long term, to having kids, to having a job. That is how you get through any of life's big
Yeah.
transitions and struggles, and even the small ones. So, I mean, how does that kind of sit with you hearing it explained like that?
I, first of all, I'm so glad I live in this day and age where there's so many people that are starting to talk about this stuff a lot more, because I think I look at certain family members, I'm like, even sometimes my mum, I'm like, I wish you had like done some of the stuff before now. And
Mm.
yeah, no, it's definitely, yeah, I'm glad I'm trying to do the work now, because I think it's going to help me in the
Mm.
long term. Because right now I'm still in my own like bubble, I guess. I'm still got the
Mm.
cureness of the family. I've got the wraparound of school. Like there is structure. But when you go, like, looking at
Mm.
university next year, I want to go to a university that's not in Auckland. It's only like an hour and a half away from where I live, but would be me living in a different place to usual. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking,
Mhm.
how am I going to get there and not have to rely on mum and dad as
Yeah.
much? And I'm already starting to become more
Yeah.
independent. I'm already starting to make my own decisions. And I suddenly am like, oh yeah, mum, this happened. She's like, what? And but I definitely think that these are all tools that I could use and try. And I think I'm glad I'm
Mm.
trying it now and
Mm.
before I'm in the stage where it's too late, or it's like, oh,
Yeah.
well, if only I'd known this sooner, it wouldn't have been such a shit show or whatever.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that the best thing about these tools and skills is wherever you are in the world, you can use them. And whatever the stimulus is, whether it be moving to a new city, starting university,
Mm.
whatever it is, it might be this for you now, it might be something different in 10 years. The same
Yeah.
skills and the same tools apply. And I think for anyone listening to this that is older and is experiencing these symptoms, it's never too late to learn. I just really advocate strongly for young people to learn them because I think it can change their lives. I think everybody should understand these things about themselves, even if they do have a wonderful home life and upbringing and support system. I feel for a lot of people, they don't. And if you don't, I'm really, really sorry that you don't. I think the best thing that you can do is say, how can I be that for myself then? If I don't have that, if I don't have access to therapy, there are so many tools like these kind of podcasts that are free, understanding, okay, well, how can I love myself in the way that maybe others aren't doing? And I know you're really lucky and have a beautiful family and support network. But, there might be times where you've got certain people in your life that don't support you in the right way. And I know for a lot of listeners, they will be having that either in their immediate circle or, in a broader workplace, social circle where they don't feel supported and they don't feel accepted. And even for parents listening to this that do have children that are experiencing this, the best thing that you could always do is start from here, right? Start from you loving and accepting yourself, you treating yourself the way in which you deserve, you giving yourself this nervous system regulation. And the more that you can do that for yourself, the less those other people are going to impact you. And I'm not saying that it's not hard when those things happen,
Yeah.
but I know that having that love for yourself and doing what is right for yourself makes the world of a difference. I think, like you say, you want to accept yourself unapologetically in life. I feel like the best thing that someone can do is to live their life authentically
Mhm.
and being unapologetically themselves.
Yeah.
Because being that way means, yeah, there will be friendships, there will be people that you lose along the way, and that is hard. There is no denying that that is hard. but it means that you will end up with the people in your life that love you and respect you. And ultimately, that hard is what gets you the life that you actually want. It gets you the partner that sees you for who authentically you are. It
Yeah.
gets you the job you actually want to be doing. And it gets you loving yourself, which is the most important thing that you can do in this whole world,
Yeah.
because it then will set up everything for you. And I feel with something like ADHD, you know, you just have a different brain style. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you. Someone's brain's made like this, someone's brain's made like that. It's like, it's
Yeah.
just how your brain is built.
Yeah.
That's it.
And
There
honestly,
is
like
nothing, and it's just something with,
I
yeah.
on that, like I know I'm extremely privileged to have the family and support system like I do. Like I don't take it lightly. I know how amazing it is, and I've had friends that don't, and it's really hard for them. And I still have friends that find it really hard to trust people or trust adults and stuff. But something I've even been focusing on at the moment is standing up for myself and cutting off the people that don't make me feel good. Like I've had to do it at the end of last year. I did it with someone, two people, and it was really hard and it
Mm.
really sucked. But then afterwards, mum said to me, "Oh, well, how do you feel about cutting so and so off? And do you feel any guilt?" And I was like,
Mhm.
"Not really," because it feels
Mm.
like there's a weight lifted off my shoulders. And it feels like
Yeah.
there's a whole lot of the worry is gone suddenly. And
Mm.
I'm,
Mm.
and at the moment, I'm like in a bit of a place where I don't feel like the people in my friendship circles are that accepting. Like some of them are, but not fully, or just aren't even open to it. And
Mm.
I'm starting to
Mm.
think more of what's going to be best for you. Who gives a fuck about them?
Yeah.
That's them. They can sort themselves
Yeah.
out. What do you need right now? And if they're going to judge that,
Mm.
that's on them because they've got no fucking clue what you're dealing with right now. They've got no clue what's going on in your brain. And something
Mm.
I say to people is like, if I could change my brain, my ADHD brain, my anxiety brain, sometimes I wish I could. And
Mhm.
if I could take it away, yeah, I probably would. Let's be real. But in other
Mm.
ways, like especially when we talk to my brother about accepting himself, we
Mm.
say it's your superpower. Like not a lot of
Yeah.
people have this. And my
Yeah.
dad got through his whole life without being diagnosed with any of it,
Mhm.
and he's still super successful. It
Yeah.
doesn't. It is a superpower, and it's my brother's superpower. His
Yeah.
brain is amazing, and it's
And
a
it's yours.
superpower.
Yeah.
Just because it's
Yeah.
different doesn't mean it's bad. Like if you think about it,
Absolutely.
some of the top business people, even though some of them are a bit questionable, some of the top business people
Mhm.
and some of the top people in the world, you look at them and you actually find out they've got
Mhm.
ADHD, anxiety, whatever, but you would have never known.
Yeah.
You would have never known.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think the conversation is so important. There are even people like in New Zealand that are coming out saying like, "Oh yeah, I've got it," and you look at them and you go, "I would never know." And it's the same for me when I tell
What?
people.
Yeah.
They're like, "I would never know." And in a way, I think it's to do with
And
masking,
it's
but it's also about accepting
yeah,
yourself.
but it's absolutely. And it's also about, I really love that you said, sometimes I do wish I can get rid of it. It's really important to accept your feelings at all times and saying it's okay that sometimes you're like, this sucks. This is too much. I don't want this. And it's okay to feel that sometimes you're like, yeah, I would get rid of it. But I hope a majority of the time that people can embrace it as this is who I am. I am unique and I am special and I love how I do and I create how I do and I am who I am because of this. And I hope that it's a place that people get to where they ebb and flow out of accepting and not accepting. That's a normal part of life. But I hope that a majority of the time you sit in accepting and loving that is who you are and that is there is nothing wrong with you. There is no reason why this happened. It is your brain style and it is okay. And that I hope that you love yourself for that brain style. I think one thing with friendship circles and partners and bosses and everything, whether you have anxiety, ADHD, or any mental health issue, giving education first and explaining things first before reacting and before cutting people off, and which I know you've absolutely done, but this is for other viewers and listeners, understanding that people don't understand and it's okay. It's okay that they don't understand. It's okay that at first they might do the wrong thing. If you first take the approach of, how can I help them understand me best? How can I explain this with love and instead with curiosity and help them see, hey, when you do X, I feel Y. And it's not your fault. It's because of this. Or, hey, when I'm overwhelmed, I might do this. Here's what you can do to help me. The more you can have that kind of a conversation with anyone in your life, the better. But then when you get to a stage where you've done that a few times, because humans take a while to learn, if they still keep not responding and treating you in the way that you deserve, putting in a boundary of not having them in your life is a really confronting, scary thing that might make you feel guilty at first. But I feel it's really beautiful to hear, guys, what Emily is saying, that after you get through that tough time, and this is me acknowledging that there will be a tough time, it will not be an easy breezy road, it is for the best. Yeah. A sentence that I love expressing to my clients, and I've said it on my YouTube before, is if the worst case happens, if the worst case scenario, your worst case thought actually happens,
Yeah.
why are you still going to be okay? And what can you do about it?
And
it's the same thing with,
I'm going to be so
what if they're
honest.
not my friend anymore?
I'm going to be so honest with you saying that, like, I've been going through a lot the last couple 6 months, and hearing that more recently has really changed my thinking. And it's going to be like, it's not going to be the end of the world, because with my brain, I go to the worst case scenario and I go, this is going to happen, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And my parents even said to me, they're like, Emily, but what if it did happen? Like, I have a lot of medical anxiety, and I'm having to get my wisdom teeth out. And I had to see an oral surgeon, and I was so scared. I was nearly having a panic attack before going in.
Mm.
And afterwards, mum was like, well,
Mm.
if he was a dickhead and if we didn't like him, we did end up liking him and he's lovely. But if we didn't, mum was like, we can just go back to the dentist and ask for another person. Like, there are other people
Yeah.
out there. It's not a be all end all. And so it's definitely been
Yeah.
something I'm trying to
And
say to myself.
yeah. And it's a really important sentence for people to say to themselves, especially with anxiety, because this is never me lessening that if the worst case scenario happens, like, you're going to feel horrible and it's going to be stressful and it's not going to be nice. This is me saying that even when you are scared, even when you don't feel good, you're still going to be okay. And it's important for our brains to say that if that does happen, yeah, I'm not going to feel good, but I can go back to the dentist, or I can, it's like when people say, what if so-and-so don't like me, and their brain spirals, and I say, well, what if the worst case is true? More often than not, our worst case scenario is not true, but our anxious brain doesn't give a shit about that. So we say, okay, well, what if it is true? What can you do about it? What is actually in your control? You can talk to them about it. You can say that they're an adult, they're responsible for their own emotions. They can talk to me about it. You can understand that if they aren't talking to you about it and they cut you off, that they're not the right friends for you. There's so many other things, and where you can say, I'm going to be okay because I have this support network, or I can regulate my nervous system, or I can make a more conscious effort to get closer with people that I know love and respect me. I guess I just wanted to kind of finish today's episode in letting you realize that, yeah, there are all these tools that you can use to lessen overwhelm and to, transition to different stages of your life and cope best with the symptoms that you have or anybody listening has. But being unapologetically yourself and fully accepting that, the best way to do that is to say in those moments, even if the worst case happens, why am I still going to be me to have you on?
Yeah, thank you so much. And to anyone that's listening, like, I just want to say, like, it's going to be okay. In the end, it's going to be okay. And it's something Doesn't mean the journey's not going to be hard, but in the end, you will get there. And in the end, what is meant to happen will happen. And yeah, it doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but in the end, what's meant to be will be. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. It's beautiful. Everything's going to be okay. Even if it's tough right now, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Em, and everyone else. I will see you in my next episode. Thank you for listening.